It started on one of those quiet, golden afternoons when the sun lingered a little longer than usual, brushing everything with a soft, forgiving light. The neighborhood was calm, lawns trimmed, children's laughter faint in the distance, the smell of someone's barbecue hanging lazily in the air. I was fixing the loose panel on my fence when I saw her, Asterisk, my merry neighbor Asterisk, standing on the other side, watering her garden with the kind of absent-minded grace that made everything around her feel still. She must have been around 40, maybe a little more, with long black hair pulled into a loose bun and strands framing her face as the breeze played with them. She wore a simple white sundress that swayed at her knees and caught the light like it was made for her. There was something in the way she moved, confident but unhurried, as if she'd long since learned that the world would wait for her. Our eyes met by accident, or maybe not. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that wasn't meant to be noticed but left a mark anyway. I returned it, though my chest felt unexpectedly tight. "Fence giving you trouble again?" she asked, her tone teasing warm. Her voice carried over easily, low and calm, yet it had that edge of playfulness that made the simplest words sound like they meant more. "Yeah," I said, straightening up, brushing the dust from my hands. "It's like this thing knows I'm not great with tools." She laughed, soft, control, but real. The kind of laugh that told you she didn't laugh often, and when she did, it meant something. The sound of it lingered in the air longer than it should have. That was how it started, just small talk over the fence. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that could be called wrong, but something about it felt like stepping too close to the edge. She asked about my work, my family, my late nights coming home. I asked about her garden, her favorite books, the little things she said her husband was too busy to notice. Every word felt careful, balanced on a wire. I found myself waiting for her to come outside every evening, pretending to fix something just so I'd have an excuse to see her again. Sometimes she'd bring me a glass of lemonade, her fingers brushing mine as she handed it over. The first time it happened, I told myself it was nothing, but the way her gaze lingered afterward told me it wasn't. As the days went by, the air between us thickened with something unspoken. It wasn't love, not yet. It was awareness. The awareness of closeness, of glances held too long, of words that carried hidden meanings neither of us dared to name. That day when she said, "You're out here a lot lately," I smiled and said, "Maybe it's the view." Her lips parted just slightly. Then she looked away, but I saw it. The faintest, smallest tremor of a smile she tried to hide. That was the first spark, quiet, unintentional, and impossible to ignore. It didn't take long for our talks to stretch beyond the fence. What began as casual neighborly chatter about weather and gardening soon turned into something deeper, quiet exchanges that carried more weight than either of us admitted. One evening, I was on the porch when I heard her voice again. "You're not working tonight?" she called, leaning against the fence with her arms folded, her posture casual but her eyes sharp, curious. "Day off," I replied, sipping from coffee mug I didn't even want, just to keep my hands busy. She tilted her head slightly, the soft glow from the porch light tracing the curve of her cheek. "Must be nice," she said. "Having time to yourself." There was a pause, a kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy with things unsaid. I wanted to ask if she ever got time for herself, but the look in her eyes told me she didn't. So I asked anyway. She hesitated before answering. "Not really. There's always something that needs doing. Dinner, laundry, keeping up appearances." The way she said that last part, it lingered. Sometimes I forget what quiet feels like. That hit deeper than I expected. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She smiled faintly, a little embarrassed by her honesty, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. We started talking more after that. Small confessions here and there. I tell her about the deadlines I missed, the things I wanted to do but never did. She'd tell me about how love changes after time, how comfort sometimes turns into silence. There was no judgment, no pressure, just two people talking like the world wasn't watching. But the world always watches. One afternoon, she invited me in for coffee. "You've earned it," she joked, after I helped her carry a few heavy grocery bags. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just being polite. Inside, Her house smelled faintly of vanilla and jasmine. Everything was neat, too neat, like it was trying to hide the emptiness between its walls. She moved around the kitchen with effortless grace, every motion calm, deliberate. When she handed me the mug, our fingers brushed again. This time, neither of us looked away. "Your hands are warm," she said softly, then caught herself, laughing it off. "Sorry, it's okay." I interrupted. "You don't have to apologize." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. We sat across from each other, steam curling between us. Her eyes found mine, steady and searching, and for a long moment, it felt like time stopped. That's when it became clear, whatever this was, it wasn't just friendship anymore. When I left, she walked me to the door, her expression unreadable. But as I stepped outside, she said quietly, almost to herself, "You make it too easy to forget what I'm supposed to remember." And with that, she closed the door, leaving the faint scent of jasmine behind, and a heartbeat that refused to slow. After that day, the rhythm between us changed. It wasn't something we spoke about, it just happened. The casual good mornings turned into quiet check-ins, small excuses to talk, reasons to stay just a little longer. Every encounter felt like a test of how close we could stand before someone noticed. One Saturday, she was out tending to her garden. The sun caught the edges of her black hair, streaking it with bronze. She wore a loose white blouse and denim shorts, the kind of outfit that looked effortless but meant comfort. When she saw me, she smiled, small, private, like we shared some inside joke that the rest of the world wasn't allowed to hear. "Can you hand me that watering can?" she asked, pointing to it just past my feet. I stepped closer, and when I gave it to her, her fingers brushed against mine, deliberate, slow, like a question she didn't say aloud. She noticed the pause, the way I didn't pull away right away. A moment later, she said, "You really should stop being so helpful. Someone might get the wrong idea." I smiled faintly. "Someone already has." Her eyes flickered, just for a second, caught between warning and curiosity. Then she turned back to her plants, pretending not to hear me. But the air was different now, thick with awareness neither of us could shake. Later that week, it rained. Hard. I remember standing at my window, watching the storm, when her voice came from the porch. "Your lights are out," she said, holding a candle. "You okay in there?" I nodded, half laughing. "Yeah, power's out. Guess it's one of those nights." "Come over," she said suddenly. "Until it's back on. I've got candles and tea." I hesitated for half a second, but I went. Inside, everything glowed soft and golden from candlelight. The storm outside was loud, but made the room feel smaller, closer. She handed me a towel for my wet hair and smiled gently. "You look like trouble," she teased, eyes scanning me in a way that didn't feel playful anymore. We sat near the couch, knees close. The sound of rain filled the silence. She asked about my family, my work, my dreams. Her questions weren't polite. They were personal, intimate, like she wanted to know who I really was, not just the neighbor next door. When the lights flickered back on, neither of us moved. The storm had passed, but something else had taken its place, something quiet, unspoken, and alive. She looked at me for a long time before saying softly, "You shouldn't have come." I met her eyes. "You knew I would." For the first time, she didn't look away. That night, when I walked home, her voice followed me through the rain. "You need to stop making me forget where the line is." But deep down, we both knew, whatever line had existed, we'd already crossed it long ago. After that storm, nothing between us returned to normal. Our words were careful, but our silences were louder than ever. Every glance felt heavier, every pause stretched a little too long. We had begun orbiting each other like two stars caught in the same pull, knowing the gravity was wrong, but unable to resist it. A few days later, I saw her at the local market. She was standing by the fruit stand, phone pressed to her ear, brows slightly furrowed. Her husband's name slipped out once, a soft, practiced tone, but the way her shoulders dropped after she hung up told a different story. When she noticed me, her expression changed, not surprise, not guilt, but something quieter. Relief, maybe. "You following me now?" she said, half smiling, trying to sound light. "Depends." I replied. Would you want me to? That earned me a soft laugh, but her eyes betrayed her calm. They flickered with that same hesitation I'd seen in her kitchen in the candlelight when the storm had trapped us together. We ended up walking back toward the neighborhood together. She talked about the garden again, about replacing her roses, about anything except us. But the closer we got to her gate, the slower she walked, like she didn't really want to reach the end of the path. When we reached her door, she turned to me and said quietly, "You make it hard to pretend." Pretend what? That I don't think about you when I shouldn't. For a moment, the world shrank to just that porch. The hum of cicadas, the warmth of dusk, her voice, soft, trembling, honest. I didn't answer right away, because anything I said might break what was hanging between us. Finally, I whispered, "Then don't pretend." Her eyes softened, but she stepped back, just enough to remind me. There were still rules neither of us were brave enough to destroy. "You don't understand," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "It's not about what I want. It's about what I can't let happen." Before I could say another word, her husband's car pulled into the driveway. The shift in her expression was instant, like watching sunlight vanish behind a cloud. She turned away, her voice composed again. "Thanks for walking me home." That night, I sat on my porch, lights dim, trying not to look toward her window. But I couldn't stop hearing her words. "You make it hard to pretend." A few hours later, my phone buzzed. A message. Asterisk. "You left your umbrella here." Asterisk, I hadn't. When I walked back over, she opened the door slowly, eyes tired but full of something raw. The lights behind her were off, only the porch glow outlining her face. She didn't hand me anything. She just whispered, almost brokenly, "You shouldn't keep coming back." I stepped closer, voice low, then stopped, leaving the door open. And in that pause, in the soft tremble of her breath, I knew neither of us wanted to stop. The night she left the door open changed everything. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. It was the kind of moment that hangs between two people like a held breath, a question neither dares to answer, because once spoken, nothing goes back. She stood there, framed in the doorway, one hand clutching the edge as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. The soft porch light washed over her face, revealing the kind of tired beauty that comes from a life spent holding too much inside. Her eyes met mine, cautious, yearning, terrified. "Come in," she said, barely above a whisper. I did, but not all the way. Just enough to feel the warmth of her home again. The scent of vanilla candles, the faint hum of a jazz record spinning in the next room. She looked down at her hands, fingers brushing her wedding band, then dropping to her side like she didn't want to feel it anymore. "This is wrong," she murmured. "I know. Then why are you here?" "Because you didn't close the door." That made her look up, a flicker of emotion breaking through the restraint she always wore. She stepped closer, close enough for me to notice the tiny line between her brows, the faint shimmer of unshed tears. Her voice shook when she spoke again. "I can't keep pretending I don't feel it." The room seemed to hold its breath with her. My pulse quickened, not out of lust, but out of something far deeper. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was the ache of two people who had found comfort in each other when they weren't supposed to. I reached out, not to pull her closer, but to let my fingers brush hers. Her hand trembled in mine, and for a second, she let herself hold on. The touch was simple, but it burned, soft skin against soft skin, hearts thudding just loud enough to fill the silence. Her voice broke at first. "If anyone saw us right now, they won't," I said quietly. "And even if they did, they wouldn't understand." Her eyes lifted to mine, deep brown, tired but alive again, and I saw it. That tiny spark she'd been burying under guilt and duty. "I don't know what this is," she whispered, "but I can't stop thinking about it." "Then don't stop." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and for a moment, neither of us breathed. She looked at me as though she wanted to say something, to end it, to begin it, to escape it, but all she did was lean forward just enough that I could feel her breath graze my jaw. Then she stopped, pulled back. Her eyes glistened. "Go home," she said softly. And though I turned to leave, I knew it wasn't over. Because when I looked back, she was still standing there, door half open, eyes following me into the night. Neither of us had crossed the line that night, but we both knew the next time we would. The days after that night felt heavier, like every word we didn't say was dragging the air down between us. She stopped answering my texts. The curtains at her window stayed closed. And yet every evening when I walked by her house, I catch the faint sound of her piano drifting out, soft, hesitant, the same tune she used to play when we'd talk for hours without realizing how late it had gotten. I told myself to stay away, but silence has a way of breaking you before you even realize it. It was raining when I went back, not to her door this time, but to her backyard. The light from her kitchen glowed through the window, and she was there, standing by the counter, staring at a cup of tea like she couldn't decide whether to drink it or throw it away. Her hair was loose, a few strands sticking to her damp cheek. I'd never seen her look so fragile or so real. When she saw me through the window, her expression froze. Then, slowly she came outside. No umbrella, no hesitation. Just the sound of rain against the pavement and her footsteps closing the distance between us. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Trying to understand why you ran." Her arms folded, but her voice trembled. "Because if I didn't, I'd lose everything. And if you keep running?" She blinked, rain mixing with the tears she refused to shed. "Then I lose myself." The words hung between us, raw and bare. I took a small step closer. She didn't move back. The rain soaked through my shirt, cold against my skin, but all I could feel was the warmth radiating from her, the kind that comes from a heart fighting too hard to stay quiet. "Tell me to leave," I said softly. She looked up at me, eyes full of fear, longing, and something dangerously close to surrender. "I can't." I reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair away from her face. Her breath caught, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to stop. Every rule, every promise, every wall we'd built to keep this from happening, crumbled. Her hand came up, hesitating at my chest, resting lightly against my heartbeat. "This is madness," she whispered. "Maybe," I said, "but it feels real." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything we'd been holding back. The thunder rolled in the distance, and she finally let her forehead rest against my shoulder. No words, no explanations, just the quiet acceptance that whatever this was, it had already gone too far to turn back. After a while, she pulled away, her voice shaking. "If anyone finds out, they won't," I promised. She looked at me one last time, eyes searching for the strength to let me go, and failing. Then she said the words that sealed everything. "This can't happen again." But her fingers were still holding mine. And in that moment, we both knew it already would. The morning after the storm, the air felt strangely still. The rain had washed everything clean, but inside, nothing felt settled. Her window was open again, sunlight spilling through white curtains that swayed gently in the breeze. It was the same house, the same distance between us, but everything had changed. I hadn't planned to see her, not after what happened. But when I stepped outside, she was already there, standing by her gate, coffee cup in hand, wearing that calm mask she put on whenever the world started asking questions. Her hair was still slightly damp, falling over her shoulders, and the faint scent of vanilla and rain carried across the short space between us. "Morning," she said, voice light, practiced. "Morning." It should have been simple, neighborly, casual, but the quiet that followed wasn't. Her eyes lingered longer than they should have. Every pause felt like a memory we couldn't hide. She looked down the street, as if searching for something safer to talk about. "People talk, you know." "I know." Her lips curved in a small, sad smile. "Then maybe it's better if they don't see us together." I nodded, even though the words felt like glass in my throat. "If that's what you need." She exhaled slowly, then whispered, "It's not what I need. It's what keeps the world from burning." That was her way of saying she was scared, scared of losing the life she'd built, the reputation, the balance she held so carefully. I understood that, but understanding didn't make it hurt any less. I took a step closer, enough that the morning light hit her face, revealing the faint shadows under her eyes, the ones that came from sleepless nights and thoughts that refused to fade. "Then let them talk," I said quietly. "They don't know what this is." Her gaze lifted to mine, hesitant, searching. And what is this? I swallowed hard. Something we'll never be able to explain. For a second, she looked ready to say something, to end it, to define it, to make sense of it. But instead, she reached up, brushing her fingers across my wrist in a motion so soft it barely felt real. Then maybe we don't have to. Her hand lingered, warm against my skin, before she stepped back, breaking the contact. The space between us filled with sunlight and restraint. Two people caught between wanting more and knowing better. "Promise me," she said, her voice low. "Whatever happens, this stays between us." I looked at her, memorizing the way the light curved around her hair, the quiet ache behind her composure. Where else could it go? For the first time, she smiled. Not the polite one, not the careful one, but the real one. It lasted only a second before she turned toward her door, her shadow stretching long across the path. And as she disappeared inside, I realized the truth. Some connections don't need forever to leave their mark. Some stay, quietly, in the spaces between what's right and what's real. And that's where she'll always be, between us.